the first step is I create the concept of the podcast. It's like a building a product, you know. As I start to think what's the name of the podcast, it's become one of the brand and how I create the content and then how I promote the content within the like a social media. I how to promote that podcast as I do with my rice product. So I think it's a different things, but I treat it with the same like a same product for me. So I learn a lot.
Welcome to another episode of Navigating the Rise. Today I have Mr. Popo from Indonesia. So Mr. Popo has a lot of different backgrounds, ranging from, I would say, um, entrepreneurship to podcasting and many other things. So I don't want to go through the details. I will let Mr. Popo showcase his natural talents in various different avenues.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Rizky Ardinugroho, but most of people here knows me as Mr. Popo. Mr. Popo is one of the character on Dragon Ball manga stories.
Yes.
Yes, one of the character who, yeah, yeah, he has like a dark skin and a short, and she's one of the Earth God there. So
Uh-huh.
my friends knows me like that character. So everybody call me with them, Mr. Popo. That's my name came from.
Nice.
So right now I'm doing my own business. It's on agriculture, and also I do some stuff on a podcast. I have like a three podcasts. One of the famous my famous podcast is called Do You See What I See? It's a horror podcast.
Whoa.
I collecting a lot of stories from many people, and I produce it with the back sound, with the sound effects and everything. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, three podcasts. Are all three of them still running right now?
Yeah. Still running. Everything's still running.
Well, how do you manage three of them? That's a lot of work from my experience. How do you actually manage the three different ones?
Yeah, actually, it's my new hobby, making a podcast. And right now, I have a like a three teams, different teams.
Okay,
So we produce it together, and yeah, I'm glad it's worked well right now.
cool. That sounds great. I'm also curious about I think you are also an entrepreneur too. So
Yep.
I'm curious about how does the podcast actually tie into your entrepreneurship, or they're kind of very separate endeavors.
Yeah, actually, my first podcast, as I mentioned before, it's called Cerita Usaha. Cerita Usaha is one of my entrepreneur podcasting something. So I'm working. My partner is a university lecturer, and she she do a lot of entrepreneur helping things. So we make that podcast to make a guideline for everybody who wants to start a business. So based on my experience on my work, so we do a lot of tutorial something for they want to like the first maybe the first five step to entrepreneurship things. That's the whole point of my podcast. So I think it's very close between my work and my podcast on that podcast. So I think yeah, it's all relate. Yeah.
Okay. What about the other two?
The other two is it's very different genre.
Uh
The
huh.
second one is I create the podcast. It's called Pabrik Cerita. Pabrik Cerita is like a radio play, like a short movie, but like a web series, but in on a podcast,
Okay.
audio only. And the third one is it's called Do You See What I See? It's the most famous one. It's yeah, it's a horror stories.
Well, so what language is that in? The most famous one.
Yeah.
What language is that in?
Oh, it's on Bahasa actually, but I have some episodes on English.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah,
Cool.
I hope that maybe you can tell your story if you have one.
I mean, I don't have that many horror stories. Well, horror stories is I almost drowned while scuba diving. When I almost lost my air. I lost my air for a while, and I thought I was
Okay.
going to die, but it was fine, so it's not a big deal. I'm still here, so
Okay. Thanks.
yeah. So I'm curious about then now since you have so many things going on, what's your main focus at the moment?
Yeah, since it's no, this pandemic things, my I'm right now and my staff we are stay work from home, here
Yeah,
in Indonesia. Not a lockdown all the cities, but we're still working, but still we work from home, and we do a lot of things from home, uh, like delivering things from home also. So right now I'm really focusing in creating something on podcasts, especially in cerita usaha and do you see what I see?
I see. Cool.
Because right now I have a exclusive contract from Spotify. I'm one of
Nice.
the exclusive artists podcast in Indonesia.
Oh wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
for
Congratulations.
the yeah, thank you for the do you see what I see? It's basically like 5 times a week, so almost
Ah,
every day. So I have to produce a lot of episodes.
every day. That's a very big commitment. Props to you.
Yeah.
I only do mine like once every 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool. And then so also curious about like uh how did you take your entrepreneurship learnings into the podcasting space? Is there anything that you learned while being an entrepreneur that you take it into the podcasting, or is it basically a brand new skill set that you have learned from before?
Yeah, actually, podcasting things is a new world for me. It's new skills. I haven't tried to edit anything. I mean, like producing audio files and editing the video for YouTube. It's new things for me, but the same things is I always think that this podcast is also a product for me. So also it's like a new business for me because like a cerita usaha, the first podcast and the third podcast, I already registered as an IP, intellectual property.
Oh, how do you register the
So
IP? Is it the content or something else?
I register as a brand, and
Oh,
now
got it.
I on cerita usaha I do some like workshops, and I work from with the other parties and government too. And then also, do you see what I see? I already create the two books from that podcast. I, and also I sell some merchandising, and I do some like uh, on progress. We do some webtoon. Webtoon.
Yeah,
It's like a manga.
yeah.
Yeah, and also yeah, after this Corona things, is maybe will be produce some movies from Do You See What I See?
Wow, that's pretty cool. It's going to
So
come.
I think so I think it's a new opportunity for me, and I always thought that this is a new business for me.
What are some lessons learned from your previous businesses that really help you make this successful, do you think?
Yeah, because I do a lot of stuff of with the retail things, so
Uh-huh.
uh, yeah, it's all related between. Yeah, I do some agriculture things, and another side I create a podcast, which I think it's a product. So I think it's all related.
Well, do you have some specific examples? What are some of the relation besides the broad category of retail experience? Like, what are some specific steps that from either one that's transferable that help you make this more successful?
Yeah, I think I create like the first step is I create the concept of the podcast. It's like a building a product, it's I start to think what's the name of the podcast. It's become one of the brand and how I uh, create the content and then how I promote the content within the, yeah, I guess, social media. I how to promote that podcast as I do with my rice product. So I think it's a different things, but I trade it with the same like a same product for me. So I learn a lot. So, and also I manage the team. It's like yeah, it's kind of the same with my team on my business and my podcast. So I think everything is related from that.
Wait, so when it comes to making team, did you make the team initially when you first started the podcast, or did you wait until your podcast has, like you said, got sponsored by Spotify before you start making a team?
Yeah, 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 of course. I started uh, with myself, and I try after like 70 episodes, 80 episodes. I
Whoa,
start
wow.
I start to think that it's already worked, and I got the revenue from that, and I think that I have to create a team that will help me to produce, to manage everything. So I think it start to growing bigger and bigger after that.
Whoa. So, I mean, taking your experience now for other podcasters, then you mentioned that obviously doing really well to get sponsored by Spotify and getting revenue to run a team. What are some of the like major tidbits and takeaways that you have for, say, other future podcaster, where they're going to do it abroad or in Indonesia,
Yeah,
that you recommend if you were to do it all over again?
I think the very important things is consistency, right? So before everything happened, I mean, before you got the money, before you got the revenue, or maybe the platform looking for you something, yeah, you have to grow yourself. I mean, the specific content is which is it interesting for your listeners to get engaged with your content. And then after that, yeah, you just try to be consistent. Actually, on the first time I'm doing this podcasting, I release the episode. It's like every day. It's like almost 30 episode per month. So I don't have to wait until yeah, I have like more than 70 or 80 episode. So I really confident to to over to one of the platform in Indonesia. So I come to them and I ask them, do you think I have a potential with my current episodes? I think so. They really happy with the episodes. And yeah, I already generate the listeners. Yeah, quite quite big, I think, because yeah, the concept. So I think the important ones is you have to create something that it's different with the other podcast. Maybe it's unique, and then yeah, just keep doing. I mean, yeah, consistent, and also don't forget to promote your podcast, and just try to, yeah, try the find the opportunity just directly. Sometimes platform, yeah, they didn't come to you, but you come to them. So I think it's you have to actively, yeah, sell your content.
Cool. So you mentioned
Yeah.
those four. You mentioned four things. What's the fourth one? First one is consistency. Second one is being different. Third one's promotion. What's the fourth one?
Yeah, and then you have to always innovate. Yeah, I mean, based on your quality, you have to raise your quality, and then always ask for from your listeners what else we can do. Yeah, it's about quality, and never make your listeners bored with your content. So
Cool. So
I
now,
think, yeah, so, yeah.
so how curious about you? How do you innovate? So for example, the one is the most popular one is what is all what you see is what you hear,
Do you
right?
see
Is
what I
that
see?
do you see what I see, right? So for that one, how are you constantly innovating? As an example.
Yeah, if you heard my very first episode, it's a very, yeah, I'm a newbie, right? i
Uh,
I never did some audio work, something like that. So my editing is very, yeah, very standard. And time after time, I always learn how to create something immersive. So I put a sound effect, and then I put back sound, and I start to learn about how to telling the story, how to become a storyteller, especially in horror. So I start to learn how to write a script or something like that. And so I have to understand what the horror listeners type likes with the story. And then now I started creating like a specific sound effect. It's called like a foley. I start recording like steps and then door knock with specific sound,
nice.
a lot of scratch. And I start, yeah. And the reason episode, I include a lot of when I edit, it's like almost like 16 layers. But in the very first episode, it's only like the story, like maybe 2 or 3 layers only. But now it's become more and more. So I think, yeah, that's my progress. And I'm still learn about anything that will increase my, yeah, my skills, and also make my listeners happy.
Yeah, cool. I'm also curious, how did you end up choosing horror as your podcast? Because there are other genre as well. So I'm just
Yeah, yeah,
curious
yeah, yeah.
about that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, actually, most of my listeners knows me from my stories. My stories is so viral in Indonesia. So back then in my college life, I
Yes.
I, I stay in my grandfather's house that's very haunted. And I told the story on the YouTube channel, and it's more than maybe 20 million views right now.
Whoa.
More than 20 millions. After that story became a viral, so some of the, you know uh, movie makers had a contract with me to make movies from that. So I think most of people here in Indonesia knows me as a horror storyteller.
Ah, interesting. That
So
makes
after that stories on the YouTube, actually I try to replicate replicate that viral with the content, but I choose podcast as a media.
Got it. So why did you choose podcast as opposed just work from work on a YouTube?
Actually, I have a YouTube channel right now,
Okay.
but I start first at a podcast at an anchor with anchor.
Yeah. So
So I yeah
I'm I'm
because
curious.
yeah
I'm
yeah
curious why did you decide to choose podcasting when the viral views are on YouTube? Normally, when people think, from my perspective, if you got viral views on YouTube, it's keep going on YouTube, but you pivoted to the podcast first. I'm curious about your thought
as
process.
I told as I told you before, I'm not a content creator, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think podcast is the easiest things that close to me, that I don't have to have a like a proper camera and all the gear stuff. So at the time, at 2018, it's the rise of Anchor. You know, it's free, it's easy to produce. So I'm just created my podcast with my these old computers. So
Nice.
I don't have to invest anything in a gear. So I think it's a good move, because at the time there's a lot of YouTuber in Indonesia that's very famous. A lot of very a lot of people, you know. So I think my chance is very I have a small chance if I start my debut on YouTube, even if I already viral. So I think I choose the podcast because there's nobody here in podcast Indonesia at the time. So I start in an anchor, and voila, after 1 week, I become a like a top chart in Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything.
Well, congratulations. Awesome.
So so yeah, it didn't take a lot of time to get famous because nobody have a podcast content at that time.
So basically, it's basically saying that, yeah, mine was the top because there are only like let say for like it's like saying when someone go in a race and they say, oh, I got first place. It's like, oh, cool, that's awesome, right? And then you find out, like, by the way, there were only four people running in the race.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
cool.
after podcast become a viral, I am still maybe like a top three, top four on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, and here in Indonesia. I think it's yeah yeah it's a fortunate move for me.
Nice.
So after it's become a viral, everybody knows me as a podcaster. So I start my YouTube channel after that, and it's become viral too right now. So maybe you can call me as a podcaster and a YouTuber also.
And then pretty soon something else too, right? Cool. So I'm also curious now, what are some of the challenges that you have gone through in that process?
yeah, because creating a content, it's a very hard things to do, right? So you still have to keep trying to create and consistent. I mean, when it's come with no money on it, so no revenue, still you still have to produce until someone looking for you.
And so
So
how do you go through that process then? Because you're creating content, there's no revenue.
yeah
What is that? How did you,
I
both on a mental basis
yeah
approaching it and also the tactical stuff that actually doing it?
I think I always think that this a new thing. It's give me some adrenaline, right? So this is my new things. This is my new hobby. I always say that. to myself that this is my new hobby. So I have to expert on this. I have to know everything about this. So everybody is a learning curve for me. So I have to learn from many people. I met a lot of people to ask how to edit this, how to do this, how to. So just like a building some like a new business for me. So I think it's give me like a power to consistent. So I met a lot of people. I learned a lot. So yeah, I think this is the process when yeah, when you need the consistent and yeah, before money is come, you know, it's one of my fuel.
Got it.
So
Cool.
I think when you think that this is new hobby, new skill that you have to increase your quality, is it's become one of the my my power to do
Cool.
this.
Awesome. I think we're nearing the end of our episode. So thank you so much, Mr. Popo, for being here. So I want to summarize everything we talked about. So just kind of have listener have an outline of that happening. So basically, you couldn't describe yourself as a YouTuber and a podcaster first. And then also that you treat podcasts like a business, how in your past entrepreneurship mentored is. So now you so from that you transfer a lot of past experience can be transferable for other people who are listening. So in your case, it's a retail experience. And you mentioned that there are four key attributes that's really important when it comes to pursuing this endeavor, which is one is being consistent to never stop. Second is find an angle that's different from other people. And then third is be very vocal promoting yourself, and then lastly constantly innovate. That way you can have a chance to become a Mr. Popo who has viral videos and podcast content. Cool. Yeah, so
Yeah.
am I missing anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it's quite you summarize this very well.
Cool. So if for listeners who want to reach out, or listener and viewers who want to look you up, how can they best reach you?
Yeah, it's on my Instagram at mizter dot popo. So you can visit me on the Instagram. Unfortunately, for you who yeah, you know that yeah, who know Bahasa Indonesia, so I think all my content is on Bahasa. So maybe yeah, after this, I want to create a English language podcast on my podcast. So you can all hear the horror stories from Indonesia, but in English.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you again, Mr. Popo, for
Thank you,
being
George.
here.
Thank
Cool.
you. Success for your podcast.
Thanks.